What up? Welcome back to another episode of GLE. Today, we've got the bearded wonder himself, Travis Davis. Welcome back, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
You know, for those of you who don't know, Travis, it's not his first time on GLE. If you want to check out his first episode, you can go back to number 57. Had a really good conversation, covered all sorts of stuff. I won't redo his full bio, but Travis is a successful investor, entrepreneur. He's bought and sold businesses. And in addition to owning, operating several businesses, he's got a bomb-ass YouTube channel called My Big Dumb Life. And he wants to help you get rich with a focus on business and investing. And Travis is the first repeat guest we've had on GLE. It's an honor, brother. Welcome back.
I was going to ask that. I didn't know if I was the first or not. But I appreciate
the first,
it. I'm glad
man.
to be back.
Well, I had all these questions about like business and some other business questions. We kind of went on some tangents. I was interested last time in like adoption and some of the other things you had going on personally, which were kind of interesting to me as well. But you've really taken off with this YouTube channel, man. Why don't you, if you don't follow him, go subscribe to My Big Dumb Life YouTube channel. He's got some really good content. Let's maybe start off with how did you get into the whole YouTube thing? And you know, I really have been impressed with your storytelling and kind of the way you've done your videos.
Well, I appreciate that. So YouTube, so I've always had like just a fascination with YouTube. I love YouTube. And I watch a lot of channels. I watch YouTube basically instead of TV, and I just think it's great. And so there was that. And then maybe about a year ago, a local university, Texas State University, where I live, they have a course on basically like how to be an entrepreneur, business owners, things like that. And they ask people to come in and speak, tell their story, answer questions, you know, all that kind of thing. And they asked me a couple of times, and historically I have been like a super private person. So it's like a total 180 what I'm doing now. And I had told him no. And the teacher, she asked me a few times, and just over the course of time thinking about it, you know, I kind of remembered how it felt when that switch had been flipped for me. When I first realized, you know, this could be a thing. I could go start a business. I could, you know, because we're kind of groomed from an early age to make safe decisions. Mm-hmm. Like safe, like air quote safe, right? Right. Go to college, get a job, you know, like
limited decisions,
corporate ladder. Yeah. And so I could remember the conversation that flipped that switch for me. And I thought, you know, it'd be pretty cool to do that for somebody else. So I said, okay, I'll come be a guest speaker. And the teacher, she told me, she said, well, because of COVID and everything, we're asking people to actually just open a Zoom and just record an hour, which is an hour is a long time.
That
like when you're just like trying to
by yourself to just talk at a screen.
Yeah, I had no idea. And she's like, just record an hour, just talk about your story, business, like just whatever you want to talk about related to business and that sort of deal. And she said, if you could do like 2 of them. And I'm like, oh, 2 hours. And she's like, yeah. And I said, okay. And so I kind of stalled for like a month, you know, I'm like, what am I going to talk about for 2 hours, you know? Yeah. And then one day, I just locked myself in my office and just sat down and started kind of telling my story to the camera for an hour. And then I took a break and I recorded another hour, and they were awful. It was so bad. And I didn't know how to edit. I had never edited a video at all. I didn't know anything about any of this. And when I went to send it to her, the file was too big and it kept like rejecting the email.
Yeah.
And so I was like Googling, and it said, well, if you put it into a YouTube video, you can send it really easily. And I was like,
send the link.
This is like a convenient excuse, right? And so I put it into a YouTube format and I sent it to her.
Yeah.
And like a couple weeks went by, I didn't really think about it again. And I thought it was great because I didn't have to actually speak in front of a class. Like I just recorded it. It's done. And so one day, I was out working. I was driving around. I pulled into like a Subway to get a sandwich, and the teacher texted me, and she's like, "Hey, would you like to see the feedback that the class gave?" And I said, "Yeah, I would love to see that." And I went in and got my sandwich, and while I was getting it, I got an email from her. So I went and I sat in my car, and I started reading these. It was like she made them like it was a formatted thing. They had to answer in a certain way, right?
They had like a survey of how to,
like how did this video affect you? What was your take from it?
Yeah.
And like every one of them was like, Travis is so relatable, and the way he says things is like on my level, and I just loved it and stuff. And there was a few that were like, this was super duper helpful, and and like I got
these are university level.
Yeah, and we're talking like 80 to 100 students submitted feedback. I'm just reading through them.
Yeah,
and I got teared up reading them, and I was like, I can't believe like me sitting down for an hour recording this like really bad video went over this well. Like, what if I actually put a little bit of effort into this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of how it started, And then I feel like for a long time, it was just trying to find like my rhythm and, what am I going to talk about? What I'm going to do? Because even like the name, My Big Dumb Life, like if I could go back in time, I would not do that name. But originally I was like, I have a very interesting life. And this is just kind of a channel about like all the little things I kind of get involved with. And I even used like early on, I did some videos where like I went on vacation and different things, and I don't do any of that now. Like now it's like really focused. I'm just trying to help people understand things, because the one thing that I see, and I talk to a lot of people that are thinking about starting businesses and stuff. And the one thing I see is what I said earlier is like, we're just groomed from birth to never want to take that risk because it's deemed so risky and scary and everything. And a lot of times I just end up telling people like, just take that first step. And that first step might be like reading a book,
Yeah.
But like, if you just make your mind up, I'm going to start taking steps in this direction, things will happen. You may not be like, you may not be worth $100 million, but you're going to increase your value, your IQ, your quality of life. Like some things will break loose. It will help. But until you commit, and like people, I'll get messages a lot and people will say, hey, can I call you? And I'm like, yeah. We'll get on a call or whatever. It's always kind of like that. They're like, well, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you asking me, man? You have Google, there's books, like, you know what I mean? Like you can't call me every step of the way and ask, well, what do I do next? Like just start doing things, start learning,
Right.
So it's been really fulfilling for me. And I feel like I don't have a whole lot of people like subscribe to the channel, and it's a very small channel. It's growing, right? Like everything's right. The analytics are all right. It's growing. It's steady.
Yeah.
But it's very fulfilling for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I have to decide how I feel about something to make a video about it. So I have to get really, really focused on like how I feel about this specific thing. Or if I put out information, I want to make sure that it's really good. You know what I mean? So I can't just like shoot from the hip. I'm like, I really try to put out valuable information. So I feel like it's been really good for me.
Travis, it's so interesting to hear you talk, man, because you seem like such a natural entrepreneur. And you had mentioned like that turning point in your life, that kind of aha moment. I think we talked about a little bit on the last show. Would you consider yourself a natural born entrepreneur?
I don't know. I mean,
there is such a thing.
Hard to say. That's so hard to say.
I don't even know if there is such a thing, but
I don't feel like everybody is equipped to do this. Yeah. And like, I'm one of the few, I think, that says things like that. Like, but most people are trying to sell you something.
Yeah,
I'm trying
well,
to be
sure,
like
yeah.
realistic, like if you can't handle some pressure, if
Hmm.
you can't handle the unknown, like
Right.
you might not want to do this. But most people can go start a business or can do that. And I don't know if it's programmed from birth or not. Like when I was a little kid, like people would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I'd say, "I want to own a business." But I came from like an entrepreneurial family.
Yeah.
Like when I was I can remember when I was like 18, I was going to get an apartment, and my grandfather's like, "You're going to pay for somebody else's assets. What you're going to do?" But that was the influences I had.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I
That's cool.
mean?
Yeah. 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 I'm impressed
So
with it.
it's hard for
It's
me to
cool.
say.
It's cool thinking like you made the comment about recording a video and putting it on YouTube, and yeah, that being kind of the easy way out. I remember back in my high school days, I was in a creative writing class, and we had to do a special project for our final project of the year. And I was really cool back in my high school days. I went to high school in Michigan with all the white rappers like Eminem. So I actually had a rap alias. I was Philly B from the 313. Many people probably don't know this, and I made some
You
rap.
might have
I
to
made
give
some
us
rap
a few
music.
bars real quick.
Well, so for creative writing, I asked the teacher if I could play one of my songs for the class as poetry, and so instead of having to like produce anything, I had a CD of stuff I'd already made, and I just played a song for the class and got an A on my final project. But somewhere floating out there, Travis, there's a YouTube channel that I don't think anybody will be able to find, but if you can, let me know, because I think it'd be funny if y'all can find it. But there's all sorts of like me playing guitar and rap videos and stuff that I used to store it in YouTube just because I didn't have a place to store it very easily. And
And
so
you
I
don't know
started this.
where it is?
I know where it is, but I never
Oh, you
told it.
know where
I
it is.
never
You're
told
just not gonna tell
anybody
anybody.
about it. It's kind
Well,
of
now
in
everybody
code.
knows.
Well, they know it's out there, but can they find it? Is the question.
I think everybody like has a lot more going on than you would think. And
Yeah.
people are super, super interesting. Like it's hard to really know somebody really, really well unless you spend a lot of time with them. And people are adapting all the time. Like I feel like the person I was a year ago, I'm not that person. I mean, there's similarities and like I'm still that person, obviously. But if you're not growing, I mean,
Yeah. 100%,
you
man.
just
I
got to
think
keep adding value all the time.
you probably, I don't know, maybe I'm way off, but you probably have a circle of friends that are all, kind of growth minded like yourself, wouldn't you say? Or do you
Yeah.
because like for a while, I'd have to say maybe until like the last few years, I was pretty much, only growing in certain ways, I suppose. And really it's been since I kind of started my entrepreneurial journey and some in the podcast and things like 2020 time frame was when I feel like I'm a different person year on year, kind of like what you're saying. But I think for most people that are just maybe just employees, they probably don't feel like they're a different person year on year.
Yeah, maybe not. And I do have a lot of people that we just kind of network about interesting things. I had a guy call me today and he's like, "Hey, I watched some of your videos, just stumbled upon it." And he's like, "I built this company up and sold it for, tens of millions of dollars." And, it's hard to find guys that you can talk about stuff like that with.
Yeah.
Can I call you? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm like, I absolutely want to know those people because I might learn a whole bunch from them. And if I
Heck
don't,
yeah.
it's just going to be super interesting to talk to them,
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of friends like that, for sure.
Cool. So I've read a book recently called Rocket Fuel. I don't know if you've heard of this book. It was really interesting take on the visionary and integrator roles of a business. And it kind of distinguishes that successful businesses, either one person who's very unique and lots of entrepreneurs tend to kind of start their business and by default they have to be both the visionary and the integrator. But on the last episode, we talked a little bit about you finding a guy to basically manage your company he was like a sales guy, and you said, "Nah, you're a manager." You kind of set that vision for him,
Yeah.
and he came in, and it sounded like he was kind of your integrator. I was just kind of curious, like, do you consider yourself a visionary, more visionary, or more of an integrator? And or maybe are you a unique type that's good at both?
I'm more of the visionary type, and I will say I get asked a lot, how do you scale a business? And the problem with that is it's very hard to be the visionary and transition to, the other piece of that can actually like look into all the details and manage all these like little intricate things and stuff. It takes a different personality. So it's very rare. Like you'll find a lot of people that they start a business and like they own their own business and they do well.
Right.
But the people that scale businesses bigger, they have to at some point say, I need a different perspective, and then I need to trust them somewhat.
Right.
Because like me and the guy you're talking about, I have a counterpart now that it's the same personality. They're very, they're very much the same. But the guy before that you're talking about, we used to joke, and I would say, if I didn't have you around, I'd have a really big company that just went down in flames because we forgot to do whatever we're supposed to do and didn't pay somebody or whatever, and it just blew up, but it'd be really good until it did. And if it was just you by yourself, you'd have the most organized business with no sales ever. You know what I mean? So it takes a team, and it takes somebody that can get out of the way. I actually, I was thinking about this. I was going to tell you this on our first podcast, and then I forgot when we got going. But the day we did our first podcast, my wife voluntold me. I don't know if you know what that means, but
I've learned.
She voluntold me to go put up these two big tents at the school that our kids go to. And I'm like, well, where, tell me about these tents. She's like, I don't know. They're in some shed. And I'm like, well, is there instructions? And she's like, I don't know, and I'm like, oh my God. And I said, is anybody else going to help me? She's like, I don't know. You got to be there at 4:30 or whatever. I'm like, okay. So I get there and there's like a kid, another kid, and a full grown man, and they're supposed to help me. And I say, hey guys, let's get these tents out. And the one kid, he's like 18. He says, I've done this 2 times before. He's like, those bags are right there. There's a secondary bag that has the actual tarp in it. Let's put them down right here, lay the skeleton out. Then we'll roll the thing over, and he starts going through the thing. I said, yeah, let's do it. And I got out of the way. It's an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm a multimillionaire. Like my ego should be like, I'm not going to listen to this kid. I'll tell you how we're going to, right? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I followed his lead. We got it up, done, no problem. And I think the takeaway is I'm like, there's a time when you take control and you take the lead. And there's a time when you say somebody else is more qualified and I'm going to let them take the lead. I'm still ultimately responsible for this tent getting up. And if there's a problem, like they're going to come to me. I'm not going to blame it on this kid. But
well, you might.
But I'm gonna let him take the lead. I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna help. I'm gonna make sure everything's working right. And I've done that so many times in my business. I do it all the time, even now, and even with like really low level people, right? Like, and I think recognizing that and recognizing when you're in your element and when you're out of your element is really, really important. And it's a hard skill to have.
I agree. It's a really hard skill to have, and especially if you're maybe it's actually something that before you were the visionary entrepreneur owner, maybe you at some point, like if you're an employee working in a job, right? Like and moving up, at some point you were the doer doing that job potentially, and maybe you can do it pretty well. And so, I've found it's hard to step back and say, okay, I'm going to let this person do it. They're good at it. Maybe I think I'm better or whatever, but like I can't do everything. So other people have to be able to do it. Maybe I can coach them and help them get better. But, I found that a little difficult to kind of step back and just kind of let the reins go and understand, what is good enough versus, that perfectionism tendency of like, I want it done my way.
Yeah. Well, you can still have it done your way, right?
Sure.
Because you're still like overseeing, right? But I think people's ego get in, I see a lot of times people, I used to have a guy that, I don't know how much I want to say, but we work together all the time.
Yeah.
And you try to have a discussion, and he always wanted to try to finish the thought. And if you're having a meeting, he had to say some stuff, even if it didn't bring any value. And you're like, I didn't show up so I could like feel like my ego got stroked. Yeah. I showed up to get something done and this thing is bigger than me. Right. It's not the Travis show. Mm-hmm. This is a working thing that we're building together. And so I don't know, it just doesn't bring any value when your ego gets in the way, Yeah. And I think a lot of times that's part of the problem.
100%, man. You've had quite a few cool videos lately about, turning a company from 0 to 800,000 a year revenue. Obviously, you're very talented at growing businesses. And I think you made a comment in the first episode of, you probably know a dozen or a couple dozen ways to grow a business to, 6 figures pretty easy. Which it's just cool that you have that sort of confidence, coming from somebody who's new to entrepreneurship. Like, it's just kind of cool to just think about it that way. Like, it's not easy, but it's doable, right? It's something that's achievable, and it's within reach if you know the right things to do, but it's not easy. I'm curious, like, as you're going about your business growth and, that company, I think it took you maybe 3 years, was it, to go from 0 to 800,000 in the haul off business?
Well, it was 3 years to get to $3 million total revenue, which $3 million, it depends on what industry you're talking about, but in this certain industry, like that was really good. Yeah. But the video that I did recently was specific to one of the segments that it did $800,000 in revenue. So we built that business up to $3 million of revenue in 3 years. Yeah, kind of the end.
Yeah, man. Like, how do you approach something like that? I know you had some decent startup costs, but like, what?
Yeah, and the capital all capital does is it changes your timeline, right? The first business I owned, it was 13 years, start to finish. Now I build a business in 3 years. I could sell that thing now and do really well on it. That's not what I'm going to do, but I could. But I'll say this: every business I've ever started was terrifying. And people they think entrepreneurs, like, they don't, you were born without that gene that makes you scared. No, that's not true at all. It's just seeing on the other side of that fear that there's something you just have to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And for me, that's like, I have this thing in my head that I want to create, and it's stronger than the fear to get there. Right. But that's one piece of it. And then the next piece is just all the steps to build a business. And I think the benefit I have now is experience. When I built my first business, I didn't know just all the ins and outs of payroll. I didn't know all the ins and outs of insurance, taxes, how to manage an employee, all these things. And when you do them the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time, those aren't things you dwell on. Right. The first time, I had to figure all that out. Yeah, after you do them several times, but the fear is always there. Sure. When I started the business you're talking about, that was our waste management and recycling company. I can remember sitting on my couch in my living room, terrified, just thinking, like, what am I doing? This is nuts. I've never done anything with garbage. I don't know anything about this. Mm-hmm. But I was getting calls from people that I didn't know, because I had put a post on Facebook, just like kind of taking a survey, hey, I'm thinking about starting this business. And I was getting calls from people that I didn't know, that were saying, hey,
can you hold on one second?
Sure.
All right, back at it. We had a minor interruption with, having kids. It changes things, right, Travis?
It does. It does.
It definitely
Um,
changes things.
what I was saying though is I remember I was sitting in my living room and I was just terrified, had a bunch of anxiety because I put this post out on Facebook saying, looks like we might need a garbage company in the area. And I had people that I didn't even know, never talked to before, calling my cell phone, which I didn't post publicly, which means a lot of people were talking, saying, hey, if you start this, I'll be your first customer. And I'm like, I haven't done anything. And so that actually kind of leads me down a side road that I talk about a lot in these videos. Is one thing I have learned over time is that opportunity is a huge part of the equation. Like the first couple of businesses I started, they were just businesses that I was like, hey, I think this would be good. So I went and started it. But now I look for businesses where there is just an absolute opportunity. There's a weak competitor. And if you go in and you're quick, like now I'm fast. I can go in and like I said, in 3 years,
Yeah.
you know, I ran the other company out of the area. But if you can go in, set up shop quick, and start your business, you can just absolutely annihilate somebody and build a great business. So that's what I look for now. It's just these opportunities, and that's actually we're starting a scrap metal business now, and it's kind of the same setup, man. It's just the competition in the area we don't feel is strong, and we feel like we'll set up and it's going to be a really good deal for us. The other piece of that that's interesting is like I said this in one of my videos, like I could write a letter to my competitor and with my game plan and everything. And usually if they're like a bad business, they're not ran well, like they're not going to change. Like they're not going to all of a sudden just be this well-ran business, you know? So if you identify this poorly ran business,
Right.
they can know you're coming. They can know everything you're going to do, follow your Facebook page, whatever. It's not really going to change anything,
Right.
you know?
That's
So it's
why
just an interesting dynamic.
I think, to me, that's partly why most entrepreneurs, at least the successful ones I know, you hear about like entrepreneur degrees or some sort of like entrepreneur school, and it's almost kind of like you said, you can't really like teach someone or tell someone how to run a successful business. They've got to go do it and figure it out. Like you could tell them, but they're really not going to know until they go learn it. At least typically, it seems like that would be the case.
I mean, if you have a lot of influences around you and you're reading a lot about it and everything, it's obviously going to help.
Right.
But I used to train under a guy in MMA, and he had fought in the UFC, and he said when they close that door, all that goes out the window, man. He's like, it's all muscle memory at that point. You're not thinking about anything,
Right.
and I think business is kind of similar, it's like experience really, really helps. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can't have the experience, try to surround yourself with people that have.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't do that, just read, watch
Yeah.
YouTube videos, just study all about it. And that's what I did a lot when I was young. I read constantly and watched YouTube. Like YouTube wasn't the same back then.
Right.
There wasn't guys like me making videos trying to help people,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of books, and I read a lot of books. And
Yeah.
even now, like when I started YouTube, I took Graham Stephan. He has a course on
Yeah.
how to do a YouTube channel, and a lot of it's so outdated. Like, but it helped me tremendously.
Mhm.
Like you get a little bit of foundation, and then you kind of build on it.
Yeah. YouTube's great, man. I actually learned how to play guitar on YouTube. I'm a
Oh
YouTube
yeah,
taught guitar player, and you can find absolutely anything. I thought it was interesting.
everything.
You said opportunity is a big part of the equation, and what I see a lot, Travis, you probably see it too. There's so many people like yourself as an entrepreneur, as someone who's open, and you've got experience seeing some of these things. You see that opportunity. And I think so many people that have been, they've been consumers for so long, and they don't really produce anything. They're not used to producing something of value for a customer, right? So like I feel like many people who aren't entrepreneurs, they don't even see the opportunities around them. Like they wouldn't have even seen what you
They
saw.
don't.
Right.
They don't. And it's like the blessing is the curse, right? Like I go eat at a restaurant and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I could fix this, or whatever. And once you kind of open that door, you just start to look at things a lot differently. And even people I've hired, they come to work for me, and when they see the other side of that and how I talk about things, they're like, wow, I never thought about any of that you're talking about. Like, like recently, probably every company in the world had to raise their prices. Well, there's a lot of people that get mad about these greedy corporations. But when you see the other side of that the price of tires, parts, everything went up 50% and labor went up and, all this stuff went up, like, you're like, oh, now I get it.
Right.
So for sure, I think, and I think seeing that opportunity, I'm always looking. And if I had like 5 times as much money, I could put it to work.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have 5 times as much time, but I see opportunities, and like people will talk to me. I'll say, you should look at this. I don't have time to do it, but you should look at that. I do things that I think are interesting. They're not always like, I could make more money doing other things, but
Sure.
I really enjoy the stuff I do and the people I work with. So that's what's important to me now.
What's going on with inflation?
Did you watch my videos on the real estate stuff?
The commercial stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. What you were going to do with the 10 million?
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. You want to move to that? I'm curious, you sold off your farm or something, right?
Yeah. So, well, you want to talk about inflation, or you want to talk about that? Because you said something about inflation. I don't.
Well, you were talking about businesses raising their prices. I was going to ask a question to like, it had me wondering, right? Because you got, most employees might be used to 3%, a small percentage raise year on year to account for inflation or whatever. And now we got like record inflation numbers. Like what do you as an owner of a company do as, to compensate your employees? Do you drastically change that equation? How's that work?
So we gave everybody a raise a couple of months ago to try to offset it, but it's not going to fully offset it. The sad thing about the way the economy works is, in times like this, the poor people are going to get poor. Not that my employees are poor, I don't want to say that, but in the middle class is going to get hit more. Just because like the price of something goes up, 30% and you get a 5% raise. I mean, but a company, it's very hard for a company to go raise their prices 30%, so
yeah,
it's a bad dynamic, and that's, the federal government's the one to blame. It's the craziest thing. I read a lot about the wealth gap, and I think it's so funny because I go, so the government prints a bunch of money and all this money basically ends up in the stock market. So anybody with a 401k, which is middle class, and anybody with stocks, which is rich people, got much richer over the last decade. And the poor people got poor because they didn't have those assets to puff up. And then the government turns around and says there's a wealth divide and rich people are to blame. It's the dumbest thing. But inflation is going to hurt middle class and poor people, and rich people are going to be fine. If you're rich, you probably have a bunch of real estate or a bunch of stuff that's going to appreciate because that's how everything works.
Right.
So it's a bad dynamic. We try to take care of our employees. I would say we take care of them really well, but I just think in general, trying to keep up with inflation is going to be really hard. I'm hopeful that we see a little bit of backtracking because some of this is like supply chain and not just pure inflation. So we'll see though.
Yeah, for sure. So you sold this property, I think, your farm, right? And you had money to invest.
Yeah.
You could do, I forget what they call it, but talk to us about why commercial real estate.
So I bought this ranch 6 years ago for like probably about $4 million, $4 or $5 million. And I put about $1 million into improvements. And to me, that was a really big deal. I like that kind of stuff. It was cool. I'd go out there all the time. And anyway, I decided recently to sell it. So And the main reason I decided to sell it is it's really hard to make real money in agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
The whole play is really that you're just sitting on this land and it's appreciating. Well, as much as I've done and as smart as I pretend I am, you can't have a big chunk of your portfolio in an appreciating asset that really doesn't make any cash flow, and then a couple of businesses that you're just basically reinvesting all your profit to grow this business, and then live, right? So, so I said, I need to kind of change some things around in my portfolio and get some really good, strong cash flow going. So I just decided to sell my ranch. And like I said, I had paid about $5 million. I put a little bit of work into it. Probably had $5.5 to $6 million into this property, and we put it on the market. And I mean, we put it on the market at the right time. Like, values started going up right as we were getting ready to list it. It was pretty crazy. Ended up getting a full price cash offer, $11 million. It's crazy, the amount of money that's just kind of sloshing around.
Yeah.
And so what I did is called a 1031 exchange. And what that means, it's an IRS allowance. And the IRS wants to keep investment going. If I just took that money and I put it into a savings account, like, that doesn't help the economy. So if I take that money and I go buy another asset, like a piece of commercial real estate, maybe, there's a title company that jobs are created. There's a couple of, realtors that jobs are created. Maybe I do some remodeling, after I buy it. So there's some jobs created there. An inspector, there's a job, created there. So they want to keep that moving. So what they do is this 1031 exchange, you can sell this property and buy a different property, and you defer all the taxes. So I sold $11 million worth of real estate and paid zero taxes. Now, in the end, when I finally get to a point where I say, I'm going to get out of real estate, I'll pay tax. Right. Sure. But right now it's this program, and it's really important to our economy. Some people agree, some people don't. If they stopped it, it would be a big deal. But what I did is I bought 2 strip malls, and combined it was like $10.5 million, because after realtor fees and everything, I paid $500,000 in realtor fees and closing costs and stuff. Right. But it was like $10.5 million, and I'll get a 6% return on these properties. So I created about $600,000 a year in cash flow, and I love it because they're managed. I really don't have to do anything. It's just I parked some money there, and it's like there's a Buffalo Wild Wings in there, and a salon and different things that rent these spaces, and they're all long-term leases and stuff. And This management company handles it, and they wire me the money every month. So I did like a whole series of videos about that, because I thought, who does this? Who makes videos about this? It was just a very unique experience. Yeah. And the other piece of that is I only had 45 days from the time I sold the first property to be done. Right now, it's 45 days to identify all the properties. Yeah. So I had to really be done. Like, everything's identified, under contract.
45 days is not a long time.
It's not, and it's very stressing. We would bid on a property, and it would be like, we have multiple cash offers, and I'm like,
it's crazy.
This is a $4 million property, and it just came on the market today.
Yeah,
and like, I thought I was kind of like a big dog coming in here with like a full price cash offer, and you're like, oh yeah, we got 2 or 3 of those. So it's just a crazy experience.
Who bought it? BlackRock?
I'm really glad I did it. I don't know, man. I mean, they don't tell you, but
yeah,
I had one in Houston that it was like somewhere around $4 million. The day it came on the market, we put a full price cash offer in it. We're like, we're not going to come back if we find anything, inspections or anything, like, we're going to waive all that. We don't care. We're just telling you, cash deal, we're done.
Right.
And so like 3 days go by, we haven't got an answer. My realtor calls their realtor, and they're like, we've gotten multiple offers. We're going to kind of try to figure out what we want to do here. And I'm going, really? Okay, and we ended up finding another property, and we retracted our offer on that property. But it was like 10 days. We still hadn't got an answer out of them. And I'm
Wow.
positive they were going to go back and say, let's get a best and final out of everybody. But that's just the amount of money that's sloshing around. It's just a crazy, crazy time.
Oh, it's wild, man. My wife and I
Um,
moved mid COVID, and I mean, just crunching numbers. If you count the appreciation, obviously we haven't realized it yet because we haven't sold the property. But in theory, we've essentially lived for free the last couple of years, just because of
mhm.
how we bought and how things have appreciated. I mean, anybody owning real estate right now, real estate's a great inflation hedge, for sure. And I was listening to Grant Cardone, who I'm sure you've heard quite a bit from, talking about real estate potentially, and he always made this comment that people don't get rich selling real estate; they get rich owning real estate. And he talks about like his first property that he bought, and it was here in near Houston. He bought it for like under $100,000, and if he would have kept it, it would be worth like 600,000 a day. And the house next door, he could tear it down and build another house and sell it for like 1.2 million or something crazy. And but it got me thinking.
Yeah.
He sold it and did another deal, right? And then did another deal. And so I think the rule is probably kind of what you did, right? You sell a property that has gone up in value, it's appreciated. You sell it at the right time, realize that gain, and then if you can reinvest that into another property that actually is a better deal and cash flows, right? And just keep doing that sort of thing, there is a time to sell.
Yeah. There is. And the beautiful thing about real estate is you have all these different people trying to accomplish different goals. So it creates these like opportunities and stuff. Like the buildings we bought, well, these buildings were planned 3 years ago. And then
Hmm.
there's this whole timeline to build and everything. So I feel like we got a good deal on them.
Yeah.
But the property I sold, I got a good deal on it and it appreciated. Right. Like if I was going to sell my house, I would be kind of scared because I'm like, it seems like all houses have gone up. I don't know,
Right.
how much I've gained, but if you can find things that grow faster than
Right.
everything else, right? But the thing that Grant Cardone, like I have to touch on this. The thing that Grant Cardone should say is, you can get rich by raising money from other people, because that's what guys like him got rich doing. You raise a bunch of money, you charge management fees. You got $1 billion under management, and you're charging like 2% a year to manage that. Like it adds up pretty quick. If you look at the Forbes 500, like most of the people on there that didn't inherit money are like hedge fund managers and stuff.
Yeah.
You go raise, $2 or $3 billion and charge, 2% management fee annually. Like that's how people get really, really rich. So Grant saying like, hey, I should have just bought an apartment and held on to it for 30 years is
Right.
is silly. He's selling a story. He's selling this story that he's like so smart, but the truth is like he is smart, but he's charging management fees and stuff. That's how he's making money.
Have
I
you ever
talked to a
raised
lot of people
capital?
that raise money. No, I won't do it. Um, I just, it's just, I could raise, I bet I could raise $100 million pretty quick.
Yeah.
I bet I could. I feel really confident I could. I've had people say, hey, come talk to me, and we want to put some money behind you. I
What
just
makes you
do
hesitant?
things because, well, I don't want to really answer to anybody, as dumb as that sounds. And for me, this this is going to sound dumb too. For me, quality of life is a really big deal. And if you're worth like 5 million or 10 million, like your quality of life really doesn't change that much. And I have like a pretty good thing going. So the thought of me answering to a board, having 8 guys calling me all the time, having to travel, because like that, like I could do that with my garbage company. I could raise some money, go buy a bunch of competitors out, but then I'm going to be traveling this
Right.
competitor I bought. I got to
Right.
go over
Right.
here. Then my stress level's higher. Then all this stuff, I just told you that I bought a couple of buildings that are going to make $600,000 a year in free cash flow. Like I don't need to go answer to some board of directors. I don't need anybody's money. like I'm perfectly content doing what I'm doing. And if I
Sure.
decide I don't want to do that anymore, then like I'll just stop, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I started doing this, is the freedom to be able to say, like, I want to do what I want to do. I think a lot of the people that are raising money like that, they're trying to make their scratch, right? Like I'm not saying I wouldn't do that, but
Right.
it's just not for me. You know?
I admire you, Travis. You know, I think a lot of people, they think that the life is just making a lot of money, and I think probably many of these people, like you said, you know, they get into these positions and you know, they almost have no lifestyle. I mean, yeah, they can spend money and have a big house or whatever, but they work like all the time, and they have all these pressures, right? Like lifestyle is a big thing that, you know, it's a combination of money and time and even relationships, right?
Balance and everything. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like I've been able to pursue my dreams, but I've also like 90% of the time I'm home by 5:00.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm home by 5:00 and I ask my kids, like, you know, did you get your name on the board at school today? You know, do you have homework? You know, you eat
Let's
dinner
talk
with my
about
family.
daily
And to me,
routines,
all that's
man.
balance, man.
Yeah. I'm curious.
Daily routine.
Everyone's focused on like routines and morning routines. I hear everybody talking about routines, and you got to take a cold shower in the morning and all this stuff. Like, what's the Travis Davis daily routine?
Well, I think a lot of the stuff that you hear about stuff like that is just to get you psyched up about what you're trying to do. You know, like I actually like read a lot about cold showers and stuff, and like and even stuff like intermittent fasting. Like people like they go crazy about that. It has a very, very small effect on actual weight loss and stuff like that. But having the mentality of focusing on your diet and focusing on your weight and all of that, like, and putting yourself into a calorie deficit, like really helps, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of that stuff is kind of like, it's helpful, but I don't know that it's like really, truly helpful, right? But my routine is like, so Monday through Friday, that's really the only time I work, other than like my YouTube stuff, which I don't really consider work. But I wake up between 5:30 and 6 every day, and I usually kind of lay in bed and look at my phone because my garbage company starts running at 6:00 every day, and that determines my whole day. Right? Like we plan my day, my calendar is like kind of full. But if at 6:00 in the morning, my manager calls and he says, we have a problem, like I might be on the back of a garbage truck that day, or I might have to go to the yard and like run the recycling route, or I might have to do whatever. Right. But if everything is cool and I don't have to do that, I get up and take a shower, get dressed, and I go to the office. Usually at the office, like, I don't know, 7:30. And I just kind of start reading and looking at stuff. Just like the thing that's kind of weird about my life is like, it's very quiet until it's not. Like a lot of days I might just sit around reading all day, right? Or like just doing whatever I want. But then some days when it like the ox is in the ditch and it's time to go to work, or I'm trying to get a new project off the ground, I'll be like super involved for like a long time. Like when we were going through this 1031 exchange, I spent tremendous amount of time just combing through real estate listings, just trying to understand what I was doing. Like I'm trying to allocate $10.5 million. I've never done this, and I got 45 days to do it. Yeah. Like I spent a lot of time just trying to understand what the heck am I doing? And just working with my realtor. Well, the day we got
wing
it all
it,
done,
Travis? You didn't just wing it?
No. Well, I mean, I did, but it was like, I winged it with style, I guess. But, you know, and then the day it's done is like, it just drops. Like that big event that was taking up all this time is just gone.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so what's next? Oh, well, we're about to launch the scrap metal deal. So now I'll be like really, really dug into that for, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then I'll feel like it's at a point where like it's good and I don't have to like baby it, and I'll back off. You know?
In some of our conversations, I've heard you use like the word, I think it was obsessive, or, you know, you kind of have this obsessive sort of tendency. like, do you enjoy kind of bouncing around and getting obsessed for a little while and then bouncing to something else? Is that kind of like how you operate?
I, I wouldn't say I enjoy it. It's just who I am. And like, God bless them. Like my wife, like, God bless her for putting up with me and the people I work with, because, you'll talk to me and like, just like this scrap metal thing. You'll see me and you'll be like, "Hey, Travis, man, this weather, it's kind of crazy and there's ice." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. Hey, did you know scrap metal? Like you can melt it down and like, and I'll be like all obsessed with it. And like, I can't keep my focus on anything else. I'm like, actually there's 5 steel mills in Texas and I've been talking to them, and like, I'll be all fired up about it. And I have a hard time just, just interacting in general because my mind is very one tracked, so it's like a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
But yeah, I get super obsessive about stuff until I feel like it's kind of on autopilot. Like when I started the YouTube channel,
Right.
it was like all I talked about all the time, all the time. And I would just call like random YouTubers, like try to email them and call them and stuff. And people think that's crazy too. Like I'll just call somebody and be like, "Hey, would you talk to me about this?" And
Yeah.
and I actually talked to a couple. I talked to one guy, he has 1 million subscribers, and another guy, he has 500,000. And it's pretty interesting conversations. But
Cool.
yeah, I get super, super like obsessive about things. So,
That's awesome, man.
but it's weird. Like in my daily routine, like it'll be like that Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
And then usually Friday, that's when I'll try to do my YouTube videos and I have like some quiet time and I start thinking about the next week and all that. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I'm like 100% with my kids, like we just hang out and we do a lot of swimming.
It's crazy,
like
man. It's
now
cool.
in
It's cool to
February.
see proof that you don't have to get up at 4 and do a morning workout and take a cold plunge and read for 10 minutes. You don't necessarily have to do those things to achieve a life that you want. But
I don't think you do.
It
Now,
might help you get
I work
going.
out every day.
Yeah.
I work out every day. Like not every day, but like for the most part, I work out every day.
Pretty much every day.
Even on the weekends and stuff, like an hour out of my day.
Yeah.
But no, I don't do, I read the stuff too. And they're like, this guy gets up at 4 and he does all this stuff and he reads for 45 minutes.
Some people need that, I think, like you said, I think it just depends on who you are and what your mindset's like. And some people kind of need that steady routine and that discipline to get them going and keep them on task to get what they want to get. Otherwise, they
maybe
stray. I don't know.
Maybe I'm the only one that's honest. I'm like, I wake up at 6 and lay in bed till 6:30. No, I was kidding about all that. I wake up at 4. I go for a 5-mile run. Then I eat my first meal. My life is funny. It's like there's like these projects and then they end and like then I'm looking for the next one. So it's not like this like same thing every day. And I like it like that. I don't like the same thing as far as like schedule and what I'm working on, because to me this stuff is like, it's fun. Like I don't have to do it, like I'm trying to do it because it's fulfilling, the YouTube channel. I get nothing out of putting out to the public that apparently I have like 10 million bucks that I'm trying to allocate. Right. Like that's a super bad idea to do stuff like that, but it's fulfilling.
Right.
And like I'll think about giving up and then somebody will comment like, "Man, I love these videos and all this," and I go, "Yep, I'm gonna keep going."
It's pretty cool to know that even somebody like you, somebody like me can make an impact, even if it's one person or 10 people or 100 people or 1,000,000 people. You can change the world, and it might just be a conversation with some guy at the coffee shop. You never know.
We're fighting the good fight. We're like out here fighting the moms that tell their kids to go to college and climb the corporate ladder. We're like against the moms, don't do that. Start a business, or at least have a side hustle. I tell people that too. Like if you don't want to do that, just like have a side hustle, do something on the side.
Or just know like there's more to investing than just a 401k. right?
Yeah.
Like how many people have no clue even what is in their 401k or what it is, or I heard a stat that there's a large percentage of people that get a 401k match and they don't even do it.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Oh yeah. If people get paid $85,000 a year, they live on $85,000 a year. And that's what I tell people all the time is like, maybe live off of 50,000 and invest the other.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a huge proponent of like Bitcoin, right? But like I'll talk to these random people and they know so much about it.
Yeah.
It's like crazy how much they know about it. And I'm like, that's not for me, but good for you, because like you put in a lot of work, obviously, and you understand a lot more than I do about this. And that's what it's about. Like, not everybody's going to be like, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. And not everybody's going to invest in a garbage company, right?
Do you know Dan Pena?
No.
Have you ever heard of Dan? So. He's the $1 trillion man or something like that. $1 billion man. I don't know. No. He's an interesting cat. He said that that Putin is behind Bitcoin and it's a scheme to undermine the West economy.
I don't know. I don't know about that, man.
I don't either.
I can't even understand the fundamentals of it, so I can't tell you like the whole like.
So I really like the concept of it not being able to be regulated, and not it's basically there's no middleman. It cuts out the middleman. There's no more of this banks charging a transaction fee for Phil to send Travis money. I can just send Travis money. And there's no more need for some central bank to be the middleman of everything, or PayPal or whatever.
Maybe.
I don't know, man.
I have a lot of issues, and none of them, like, don't get me wrong, I don't have a hard stance on
yeah, I'm just curious. I'm just curious what you think, man, because
Bitcoin.
I don't know what to think at this point. I mean, I've heard various opinions, and the money I have in it, I've lost 35%. So It's not an investment to me. It's gambling at this point.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'll say. The first thing is, like, me and most of the people I ever know that have bought Bitcoin have never traded any currency and don't know anything about currencies. This is just like, it was like everybody was talking about it. And what they're talking about is you're going to make a bunch of money. The decentralization and all that, like, it's great and everything. Most people jumped in because they thought they were going to make some money.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, they might.
I'm also like the kind of guy, like, I like stupid things that are simple and they have utility, right? Something like a piece of property, like, that has a lot of utility. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I can farm it, ranch it. There's minerals. If they outlaw farming and ranching, I can, build houses on it or whatever, right? Like, sure. It has ultimate utility. And so those are just the kind of investments I look for. So I'm just not attracted to Bitcoin, right? Yeah. So it's not that I'm against it. It's just not something that I'm like super interested in, right? But here's where specifically I don't understand Bitcoin. And I have a friend, he's very, very smart. And I've asked him this and he doesn't seem to have an answer. So maybe somebody out there could educate me on this. But here's kind of like the skeptic in me is like, we don't know who made this, right?
Right.
So how do we know they can't make more? And that's like the whole thesis behind the whole deal is like, well, there's only a finite amount. Well, how do you know? Are you a programmer? Did you see the code? Are you trusting the guy that's getting paid by the people to say it's the next great thing, right? Because the skeptic in me is like, I don't know who made this. It's not regulated. I'm going to put some money into it and then it's going to blow up and everybody's going to be like, oh, I got ripped off. Because that's what happens. It's the same thing with NFTs. Like, come on, man. These NFTs, like, this is the biggest scam. I think NFTs will have some value to authenticate things like watches and stuff. But when you get a receipt for a watch, it's not worth $100,000. It's worth like almost nothing. But it authenticates this Rolex or whatever, right?
Sure.
And guys like Gary
I see the value in the record on the blockchain, right? But I don't. Yeah, I struggle.
Yeah, but not value like like what they're talking about. Like here's the argument.
I struggle with it.
Okay. You can't take a picture of my NFT because I can authenticate it on the blockchain. And I'm like, that's true. That's true. And maybe that gives it some value, right? I don't think it's as much as people say, but here's the argument I would make, right?
Yeah.
The Mona Lisa, right? I could take a picture of the Mona Lisa and you could tell right off it's a fake. But if I wanted to recreate one that you weren't able to tell the difference, I would have to hire really, really good artists to try to repaint this thing and then try to age it. And it would take hours and hours and hours to try to reproduce this. I can screenshot an NFT and you can't tell the difference unless you look at the blockchain.
Right.
So for me, it's basically the equivalent of a receipt. If I bought a really nice Rolex and they said, here's an NFT receipt proving you bought this and it can be authenticated, I'm like, okay, that has some value. Not like $1,000, like $5 or something, right? And it's not a standalone. It's tied to another asset. So I don't see the art piece of it at all. I think there will be some uses. I do not think it's anywhere close to what people are saying. And the only people that are making money, like I saw a video where Gary Vee says he made like $90 million overnight.
Yeah.
Well, the guy's pumping NFTs 24/7 and he's making them and selling them.
Yeah.
And then he's telling you like 99% of these are going to go to zero. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's wild.
I don't know, man. Like
I like the NFT idea for, I've heard it used like in a use case, like instead of having to go to a record producing company or a record label, like, and the record label takes, I don't know, whatever, a large percentage of all your profits on whatever music you produce. You could produce like an NFT, sell it, and like if you have like a big following on YouTube or something and people buy it, you can essentially crowdfund through an NFT and sell, a portion of the equity or a portion of the profits of your record once it's done. And that now you don't have to go to some record label to like fund you producing a record. You can fund it like through your network via NFT. So I thought that sort of application maybe made sense. What are your thoughts?
Well, it does, but here's the thing. It's like Pokemon cards. Like they only have value if somebody else is willing to buy them, right? There's no utility or intrinsic value, really. It's just a collector's item. I'll tell you a story. You should Google this because I'm going to tell it wrong. But like the Rat Pack and the Italian singer that was part of that whole deal.
Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin.
Sinatra. So when he was like really, really big, right? He put on this big golf thing, and it was like the who's who came to this golf deal. And it was like maybe like, I don't know, a couple hundred people. And he had these gold putters made with his signature inscribed in them, and he gave everybody a gold putter.
Yeah.
Well, for a long time, they were worth a lot of money. Well, now you can buy them for like quite a bit less. And at one point, like I think at the high, like one sold for like $100,000, and at the low, one sold for like $3,000. But the thing was, all the Frank Sinatra fans died, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if all the Pokemon fans aren't around anymore, what you have is nothing. You have nothing.
It's like baseball cards, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying don't buy that stuff. I'm just saying don't go on TV or make a video and tell me about how this is like, the next thing and like everybody should pile into this, because all you're doing is ripping people off. You know what I mean? At least people like Gary Vee have the decency to say like 99% of these are going to go to zero.
Right.
As he's selling them to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As he's selling them to you.
Yeah, right. He's not one to miss an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity, Travis.
I don't blame him. But I mean, like the stuff you're talking about, like you go to a Guns N' Roses concert and buy a t-shirt. Well, like 20 years later, that t-shirt has some value. Yeah. Right? It's like the same thing. I'm just not going to invest in that. Sure. If I did, it would just be here and there. I own like a Craig Biggio rookie card. that I bought a long time ago, and like some random stuff like that. But I don't call them investments. It's just some stuff I bought,
I've got a bunch of old cards. I didn't even think about them until this week. I was at my parents' house, and I went up and I was like searching through my parents' house trying to find these old. I had like files and files of old sports cards. I'm gonna have to dig those out and see if any are worth anything.
Yeah, if they're not all dead, right? The people that want them.
Exactly.
That's a bad joke, but
exactly.
I don't know. I just don't invest in that stuff, and I think it's funny that people like make it out like it's this next.
Well, it'll be interesting. I'm kind of like weary of the whole metaverse thing, just because like it's so explicitly like the Matrix, like right in front of your face. Like they're trying to create this Matrix world that's not reality, and I very much prefer reality. I don't know about you, Travis, but
I do too. But I think
I just don't
like
get
video games, for video games and stuff, it's probably gonna be pretty good.
Oh yeah, it'll be great, but it's just I think it's heading down a path that's getting weird really fast.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like the younger generations, they don't want to do this. Like my kids, they don't want to go outside as much and stuff like that. When I was a kid, we were always outside. They don't want to do that. They want to go into a virtual world where they're outside.
Right. That's what scares me. It's weird. I don't want it. Get it out of here.
Like one of my kids, when the Wii was a thing, he had like this fishing pole thing, and he's catching fish, and he's like, "This is awesome." And I'm like, "I try to take you fishing all the time." Like
right.
Real fishing is way better than that, but I don't know. I think metaverse will be okay. I think for video games and stuff, but I think interesting applications, like think about this. Let's say you were going to move, you're going to buy a house. The house you want to look at is in Seattle. Well, what do we need realtors for if we have metaverse? We need a guy to go in, scan the property, put it online. Yeah. You're interested, you jump into the metaverse, view the property in 5 minutes. Wife jumps in, views it. They're like, you know what? Let's do it. You never went to Seattle. You never did anything. And, like, I think that kind of stuff, there will be a market. It's just how long, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, 100%. But then if you can do that, then the next thing is it's a business meeting where you're sitting in the boardroom, but you didn't have to travel.
Yeah. With this big heavy thing on you.
Yeah, or something like that, right? Well, Travis, this has been fun, man. We're pushing up on time. I'll be respectful of your time. I appreciate you coming back, sharing with the GLE network, man. It's always fun. We'll have to have you back again. One thing I wanted to ask you about before we go was this Tesla flipping stuff. You've been making so many cool videos. If y'all aren't following Travis, go follow, subscribe to his YouTube channel, My Big Dumb Life. Go check him out. He's making some really cool videos, lots of good content. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're investing, if you're into business, if you want to learn about some of this stuff and just, hear about the cool stuff Travis is doing, it's really a lot of great knowledge that you're probably not getting in other places. And one of the things I thought was so interesting, you were talking about flipping Teslas. What's this all about?
Well, so I think just because of the waiting list and just because people just have to have things now, there has been an opportunity, and there could still be an opportunity where you go down and put a few reservations down, and then when you get your Tesla, just immediately sell it. And I think there's $10,000 of upside in that. And when the tax credits were around, people were doing them, and they would get the tax credit, which I think was like $6,000 or $8,000 for a long time there. And they get the $10,000 upside. So you just buy the car, you get the tax credit, resell the car, you got 15 or 20 grand, in a month or two. And maybe you drive the car for a few weeks. And so, I'm always looking for content for the channel. And one day I was sitting around brainstorming, and this kind of hit me. So I put down reservations for like 3 Teslas, and in the video, like that's one of my favorite videos, by the way. Because the way when I'm shooting a video, I'm really trying to tell a story and keep attention and make it really, really fun and kind of fast paced, so that you're like, before you know it, the video is over. And then you're like, oh, wow, you never thought about clicking off. And that's one of my favorite videos. And I say in the beginning of the video, like historically, I haven't been a fan of Elon Musk, but I recently accidentally bought a Tesla. Well, I think you're kind of hooked right there. It's like, what is this guy talking about? But the whole thing kind of stemmed from just I was trying to create content. And then as it got closer and closer to the date for this first Tesla to come in, I decided to keep it. But I still have two. I have two Model X's that are, and these Model X's, like it's like a year waiting list right now. So if I get mine in like 3 or 4 months, I have no doubt that I can resell them right away, make at least 10 grand.
Yeah.
You know, so
crazy.
We'll see.
Everybody always thought buying a new car was a bad investment, Travis.
Well, I think normally it is.
Yeah, what's going on? It's crazy, man.
The Tesla culture and the Tesla following is pretty unique, I think. Wow. I don't know. Well, and I'll say this, like, I guess it's EVs, because I think if you had gotten like the Ford F-150 Lightning, if you had reserved like 8 or 10 of those right off, you could absolutely do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't even think about it, but I should have done that, you know. And the Mach-E, when it came out, like if you would have reserved a dozen of them, you could have absolutely resold them. There's Mach-E's, you can go on like Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and there's Mach-E's selling for, you know, $10,000, $15,000 over the price of a new one, and people were buying them, you know. So
it's wild, man.
It's interesting.
Wild, man. Well, hey, before we go, what can we look forward to? Any sneak peeks to look forward to on the YouTube channel?
I'm probably going to be doing a lot of videos kind of around my scrap metal business that we're opening up, because we'll be opening up in the next few weeks. I'm going to do some videos about my propane business, because people keep commenting and saying, hey, you should do videos about that. And then I'm going to do some videos, some more real estate videos. Like I kind of have these episodic series always kind of going, and the real estate one, there's probably another 5 videos that need to be made there. I want to do one video that's kind of like everything you need to know about buying a commercial strip mall, and just talk about cap rate and all the things, like if you're going to buy a strip mall, what you would be looking at and looking for. And then I want to do some videos of just kind of recapping the investment I made and the return I'm getting and all that stuff, because I haven't really talked about all that. I talked about I'm gonna buy this stuff, but
right.
And maybe some videos on site of the actual buildings and stuff like that. The vlogs are a lot harder to film. They take way longer.
Yeah.
Than what I call like a studio video. I like the last, like the Tesla video that I call those studio videos. I shot that in like 20 minutes and edited it in like an hour, and that's like super quick.
Yeah.
You know, so
super cool, Travis. Well, thanks for coming on, brother. It's always fun. If y'all are tuning in, go give Travis a subscribe at My Big Dumb Life YouTube channel. And if you enjoy the GLE podcast, you know, I'm trying to get better at giving back to everybody I get value from, like Travis. Make sure I'm commenting and liking and subscribing to their channels, and making sure I'm giving them some love, because I'm getting a ton of value from a whole bunch of people, and you all get to benefit a little bit from the little bit that I retain and share with you. So if you're getting value, share this out, give me a follow, rate it, subscribe, and go ahead and leave me a review, and I sure would appreciate it. Love y'all. Have a great one. Go lead everything.